your entertainment your way.
When we visit sculptor Robert Bielat at his home studio in the city of Ferndale, we find that his work is very much derivative of his surroundings. Having lived his entire life in and around the Detroit area, there's something gritty yet thought-provoking about his craft. We sit down with Bielat to take a closer look.
My name is Robert Bielat. I'm a sculptor. I'm primarily a caster and a constructivist. I've been doing it now for about 40 years. I was born in Detroit, lived most of my life in Detroit, moved to the burbs when I was a kid with the family, moved back to Detroit to go to school, and then I had a wonderful studio in Indian Village, which was a 5-car garage, and I lived above it, and I'm 62, and visited other cities, other countries, but I still like Detroit. It's a scummy little town, but we love it. My father liked art. I mean, we had quote-unquote the furniture art. You get the sofa and like something that's nice, and they were like always contemporary. But with my father, he thought, because he was a blue-collar guy, a union man, he couldn't really go to a formal opening at galleries, and we went to the museum, and he was a nice man. He died when I was 16. But when I was a kid and we grew up in the burbs, when we first moved out of Detroit, it was a new burb, so I had the access, I had the ability to get free lumber from the construction guys who were very kind to us when we were kids. We built forts up in trees, up flat on the ground, underground, and then we were always like building models, but rather than building models, taking part of this model and putting with part of that model. So I started varying in that when I was a young man. I was always three-dimensional more than two. I mean, I draw and I paint adequately well, but I haven't been spending the last 40 years in that. And so when I was in high school, my high school teacher and the shop teacher, industrial arts, played tennis together, and I asked Ted, who was my high school teacher, can we shift? And so half the class went over to industrial arts, and industrial arts, the people who were doing the formal drawings wanted to loosen up, so they came over to the other side. And so Bill Fike, who was the industrial art teacher, taught us mill writing, lathe work, and then casting. And I just fell into casting. The first time I poured that molten metal in a hole, it was like, this is what I'm supposed to do, and have been doing it ever since. My ideas come from all the time. I mean, I always think, when I talk to my students, it's always think and look. Space is all around you. What defines sculpture is the absence of space, which creates the space. And I'm always thinking ideas. I mean, the way this form fits against this form. So I'm collecting all this stuff. All the places I've been, it's like my ideas are sitting in my head, and I'll sketch it out in just form rather than pencil. It's like I see the form in the foam and what I'm going to do to it, and then all I have to do is do it. And put it to my mind's eye. And once it gets in my mind's eye and I pour it, I've been doing it so long that it comes out exactly the way I want it to. One of my sculptures, because each one is unique, each one of the castings is unique. So whatever I do, it's a unique piece. One time, no molds. Put together first in the foam, with toothpicks in the foam, and nothing's attached yet. And if the form is working with the addition of other things, then it's all glued together as tight, and this is the piece that's going to go into the box. So then it's pounded up in the box, and then the metal's casted, and then it's cleaned and patinaed and based, and that's complete. I have an attitude problem sometimes, and it does show up in the work. It's like talking about urban decay, the towers going down. Built a piece about the towers right away, didn't want to get on the bandwagon. Cast it later, and it's both tower and also a new urban cave dwelling kind of situation. And so there's kind of the decay of what society is becoming in certain areas, and then just the fine resolve of form and shape. And also I deal with Detroit issues, it's basically world issues. We're trying to kill ourselves constantly. I mean, the war front is terrible. Just our fight with nature, like the jungle always wins, our attempt to hold back nature when nature is going to win in the end anyways, and just man's urban struggle. Now there's a amount of wall reliefs I built that has to do with the relics of the infrastructure, and when you look at them, you'll see as if you stop on the expressway, look up and see all the grid and ironwork in here, but rather than cement, it's now bronze. So it's that interplay of linear patterns against smooth and rough surfaces. My favorite art piece. Throughout my career are marks of time, and I keep those usually, but My most favorite piece of all is the one I'm going to cast next week. That's the one that's waiting there to be done, you know, because basically an artist is finished when it's done. You know, I mean, all the prep, the brain, the thing, the concept, the lines, then the fruition to do it. And then once it's done, you step back and go, okay, what's next? You know, basically, what did I learn from this, and when I'm going to take this down the street and go farther? You know, I usually work in vignettes of suites, you know, so there's anywhere between like 7 and 13 in a suite. And so that when that suite's done, I usually move over to something else. But one begets the other begets the other. You know, it's like kind of a dominoes theory. You know, if the concepts come easy and fast, I mean, I got concepts for sculpture that I can pull out of my hat, like, you know, unbelievably, if I have the time, money, and effort to do it. And part of that is having a big conglomerate in my mind of pieces that then I can diffuse and pick the ones that I really want to pour, you know, because some of them work their way out in my brain as a problem. So I don't need to cast that one. I can bypass that and move right to the next one. So that's basically, my mind's always in thinking three-dimensional modes, texture, form, texture, form. I told my students once, I couldn't afford the bronze when I was younger, man. You know, so now I can afford the bronze, but I can't pick them up. So that's what I would like as super things. I would like new shoulders, new knees, and new hips. Other than that, I'll do fine.
If ever there was such a thing as working man's art, Robert Bielat's craft would fit nicely into the category, not only in style, but also in process. We head over to the College for Creative Studies in Detroit to have a more in-depth look at the work of this caster constructivist.
Bimetal casting is a procedure that's an industrial point whereby you take a static metal such as steel and a lower melting metal, fuse it, put it together in the foam, pack it up in sand and bentonite, cast the piece, and when the piece comes out, even if it's aluminum or bronze, it fuses the steel together, making it a complete unit. The metals I primarily cast are like aluminum and bronze. Aluminum's cheaper than bronze. Bronze is heavier than aluminum. And aluminum is, in my opinion, not overrated. It's not rated at all in the sculpture world. Every time you see aluminum, it's really shiny. You know, well, the way I patinaed mine, it's more like just gray tones. The reason I use patina is bronze by itself is very crow-like shiny, you know, and you can definitely tell it's bronze. I like putting a patina of like the dark greens, and I have this iron green patina that I came up with over the years, and it kind of gives it an apple green texture, and it plays to like something of an antiquity I'm going for. My work, what it makes me unique in what I do, nobody's doing bimetal casting. I started working and puddling around in this in 65, 66, and I've just taken it now to a whole new crescendo. Nobody from reading my periodicals, sculpture being around, nobody's doing this kind of casting. And it's basically an industrial casting from like being the Rust Belt Detroiter, coming from, you know, industrial capital. You know, it's an industrial way that I've taken and used for a fine arts way, and not too many people are doing this. Influential to my life and my work, which kind of just is the same thing, is Veronica, my wife. You know, we've been married now 25 years, and I remember when I was going to attempt to get a full-time position working at school, she said, I married a sculptor, I didn't marry a professor. So, I mean, with that kind of an attitude, I had to keep her. You know, and so it was always a priority with her, but she came from the art world. I met her at Michigan Gallery, and she was on the board of trustees when I went in to jury a show on poured bronze, you know, throughout the state. And so that's how we met, and we've been together ever since. Other influences, Brancusi, because he stacked up stuff. Most sculptors at one time or another stack up stuff. You know, stacking up stuff's fun. You know, and then when you stack up stuff and make it precarious, you know, and then cast it and make it look precarious, you know, that's a keeper. Sculpture is primarily my most direct interest, the form and shape just by itself. But again, everyday life is an influence in my life, you know. I mean, you have to build a file of what you've done in your life to draw from, you know, and that's got to do with, I had the opportunity, because I had a very good high school education, to read like the classics, like, you know, Catcher in the Rye, Cancer War, you know, the typical things that for a college reading list, you know, which always like provokes the mind to thought. And anything that keeps your mind provoked to thought is like a very good thing. cooking and art are like this. That's why they call it the culinary arts. I mean, because in cooking, you need patience. In art, you need patience. You can't do anything till the metal's ready. You can't do anything till the souffle is ready. You know, so cooking and art are really a close parallel. For me as an artist, I just plan to keep on going, you know, and hopefully I'll have another good 10 years of casting in me. And it seems just to make the work. You know, today's society, and as art schools go, it's the conceptual thing, you know, and in my opinion, conceptual thing is the easiest thing to do. I could sit out here and get concepts of 42 different sculptures in a matter of 15 minutes, refine them and decide to cast 4, you know, but the idea is simple. You've got to make something to run into to call it art. It can't be this abstract thought over there, because this abstract thought is still an abstract thought. The abstract thought becomes a reality when it's made into something concrete, like a sculpture or a painting, not just the scribble of things in a string. This is what's so crazy in this world of ours, of society, is like you just wake up and all of a sudden you're going to be an artist. You have no idea what an artist is. You know, I mean, just because you make pretty paintings doesn't mean you're an artist. Makes you make pretty paintings, you know. It's like, what, so what? If you got a nice painting of a frog, it's a nice painting of the frog. Guess what? Next week, Thursday, it'll still be a painting of a frog. There's nothing there to keep your mind fastened to it, you know. And the compliments I get about my work, after people have owned it for 35 years, they still love the piece. And that's my whole concept of it. If you want to get involved in the arts, the best thing to do is go to school. You need form and shape. You need the rules. I mean, there's the naivete in the art world, which is good and fine, but, you know, you should have techniques. I mean, you should be able to know how to wield a hammer if you're a sculptor. You should be able to know, like, you know, what happens to metal when it melts and then when it cools down. Details, you know, it's just like any trade school, you know, you've got good concepts, but then by knowing how to do stuff, you know, knowing how to do a souffle, you know, is beneficial, but you have to learn how to do that. I like teaching, you know, but it's college, I'm trying to get these people prepped for real art, you know, rather than just, you know, hobbyists, you know. But the ones who are hobbyists, they're going to become a fine hobbyiist, you know. But other than that, I can't really picture myself doing anything else. I mean, I've done a barrage of things over the lifetime to pay for myself, you know, eating and food. But, you know, other than that, nah, yeah, I'm a sculptor.
We are in the studio of Robert Bielat, Ferndale, Michigan. And Hi, Bielat!
How you doing, darling?
I'm fine. Look at all this work. I don't know where to start.
These pieces, well, this is when I was a visiting artist in St. Louis. I cast that, and that's about the oldest piece down here, except for that one. And these were built in the studio here, in sections of styrofoam, put together, and then taken apart and glued back together to go into the foundry. Bimetal casting, especially, this is a prime example, that this steel, this was all built as one piece with styrofoam and the steel, and then it was packed in the boxes with bentonite, which is a high refractory, water, and sand. And they are wooden boxes that are packed on top of each other, and you pack it up slowly until you're ready to pour. It was poured here and poured here, and then cooled down for a half an hour to 45 minutes, pulled out of the sand, somewhat molten, and then squelched with cold water, which takes the bentonite, which creates a chad across the metal, pops that out, and then basically the piece is done except for buffing, grinding, or basing, depending if you're going to base.
So what is the chronology of this work back here?
These two are like recent, and these, the tall Sentinel pieces, are the oldest. And so I'm talking oldest, 2005, 6. And with my own foundry now, and not depending on anybody else's foundry, I can call a pour anytime I want. I just get the crew together, and if it's right with them. And of course, if I have enough work, so the work is built here, put into a box, put into the truck, and then we go out to Ann Arbor where the foundry is. And the foundry is just basically the foundry. And we pour the metal there, do the big cuts and drilling, and then it comes back here to be finished off.
That's something to have your own foundry at your disposal.
Oh, it's like heaven sent. Heaven sent.
And you said in this area the oldest work is 2005. Man, that's recent to me.
Yeah, I'm very prolific.
Yeah, I was going to say that's you are. I mean, You turn it out.
Well,
I'm surrounded by work.
Jay Holland once said you can't call yourself a sculptor unless you make some sculpture.
That's true.
That's
I feel the same way about painting.
Yeah. You can't live on your laurels unless you're dead. And then you're not living.
No, you're not.
These are some of my small constructions just to help me think. These are the twin towers that I never cast. And this is what this piece exactly, well, it didn't exactly look like this, but the steel and the rock were all put together. And the thing over the years, it's like you see this linear pattern. Mm-hmm. This is from duct tape.
Oh my.
There's like 1/4 inch of duct tape that's around the styrofoam holding the steel in. The steel has pierced the styrofoam.
So it creates a pattern.
It creates a pattern. And then there's other pieces that you create like this. This is aluminum foil wrapped around the styrofoam, and when the metal melts, it melts the aluminum foil, and when it cools down, it goes back to the same texture as the aluminum foil.
So that's not aluminum foil anymore. That's
now it's just a solid chunk of aluminum with an aluminum foil texture to it. About knowing how to cast is like this is called flashing. You get this in bronze too when you do a ceramic shell, but the reason it's flashed here and not here is because of how to pour. We started off pouring this piece really fast, which means the gases expand and cracks the sand a little bit to get this kind of ridging, which is like evident on this piece too, the ridging, which is called flashing, but this is what I wanted.
Yeah, I like that.
And then as we got closer to the top, we slowed down, and that's how you get the refined definition.
Boy, that's really precise.
Oh, it's like it goes in exactly the way it comes out. And that's part of it is because I've been doing this for 40 years. And then construction. Bimetal casting, for instance, the connection to here and here. This was styrofoam, this is steel. It was put together, the rock was added separately. But when casting this, because steel is a static metal, it melts at a higher temperature. When this cools back down, it fuses the steel to the aluminum. So it's a heat fuse, and the steel will not come out.
This basement is divided up into these really wonderful areas. Like, you said this is your salon?
Salon. After it's all said and done, the pieces come here. These are really tricky because when you do a linear pattern in casting, and then this is something I came up with too, I glued cardboard to the styrofoam. Packed it really hard because the cardboard melts out too, and the cardboard burns out and doesn't melt out. Burns out and gives it this wonderful texture. And so I take the cardboard, rip it where I want it ripped, glue it to the fashion, the sections I want it to.
Look at the,
and then
you can see that cardboard.
Detail is unbelievable.
Oh my.
And the barbed wire again, it comes to, you know, bimetal casting. It was put in, packed in with it. A lot of people say it's like, well, these are kind of like war pieces. I said, no, these are kind of more like figurines. I said that the back.
Yeah, look at that figure. It's like almost like something that's
African, a very good influence. I've like studied African work, just like most sculptors have. And so, but this is when I was a ranch hand, and with the barbed wire was like tacked to a tree, and then 5 years later, when you came back to it, it was now part of the tree, and I was always enthralled with that. And so I figured I could like add to that.
Be like, what haven't you done? You're talking about a ranch hand.
Oh yeah, I used to be, Michael Joseph was a painter, but he also had a ranch.
Michael Joseph, I knew Michael Joseph.
In Ypsilanti.
Yeah.
I used to be one of his ranchers. We'd go around and castrate goats and herd them all in, and it's like, you know, so this is where, plus I used to ride horses. Tony Williams and I used to ride horses together.
Michael Joseph used to always have, every June 25th,
The pig roast, yes.
the pig roast to honor the victory over General Custer.
Yep.
Because Michael Joseph was a Nez Perce Indian, as you.
Yes.
I mean, those were
Now
the days.
this is bronze. Same process, because bronze melts at a lower temperature than steel does, and then a patina on it. And this is about the disarray of our roads, you know. And people say, well, where did your concept come from? It's like you stop on the expressway under an overpass and you look up, and that's what it looks
That's
like.
what you.
Except it's not as colorful.
Another thing I like about this space, man, is everywhere you turn, you see something.
And this dip that goes together closer. It's high-low.
This
and
one's
it's
high,
low.
low.
So these big pieces of forged steel were put into the styrofoam, packed, cast, fused it together, and then the rock was an addition afterwards. A very quiet, subtle piece, and it's high, low.
Great concept. And you know what's interesting and what's so great is that simple concepts can make the most wonderful works of art.
Like, look at this for like a nice minimal piece. The void, the steel's showing up in the middle.
You've influenced a lot of sculptors around. I've seen works that have the same kind of flavor and than my younger artists. And you know, the whole concept of influence, sometimes people don't even know they're being influenced because it's an existence in the air. Like a lot of painters are influenced by Picasso but may have never looked at Picasso, but it's in the culture.
Oh yeah.
So
I agree with that. And another thing that I've run across after doing this for like around 40 years is that there's parallel development where things, just because all the variables are right, is the perfect time for something to happen. And if you pay attention to the variables, there's a very good possibility that somebody else is going to repeat the same thing that you did, moving under the assumption they're still thinking from your kind of a mindset.
Exactly.
This is one of my satellites. It's got to do with the towers going up all over, destroying our visual line of cell phones. So it's like, so
right.
this is a satellite, and two, it has to do with Reed's satellite of love. Because when things spin really fast, like satellites, this would come out straight. So it's a vision of this spinning around with these coming flying out the side.
This is Bielat's, I don't want to say backyard, it's his kind of sanctuary garden, sculpture garden. Why don't you just tell us about what's going on back here?
This is my wife's bronze bimetal casting. It's her wedding gift. And structure piled up. Again, influence from Brancusi, piling stuff. I like to pile stuff. You know, and if he could do it, I can do it. And this has to do with what was referred to as shakers, when they were like trying to find gold. The little things would shake with the dirt from the top to the bottom. And so this is where this concept came from. And then this one is an attempt to hold down the earth. The perforated steel was given to me by Albert Young. And this one, best to show at the Scarab Club. I got one of those silver medals.
Oh! Your water feature we talked about earlier with the grindstone. That really makes a nice atmosphere back here for all the sculpture. Well, let's go.
Here.
I see one small rock piece there.
That's my nephew built me a sculpture of my own. And I think that's pretty good. These are constructions that were at the Vegas Gallery, and this is about the Great Lakes. That's Dredging Lake Superior, Whitefish Point, again with the grids, and Dredging Lake Michigan. And this is another one of my bronzes. And this is the same concept with the shakers. And I poured the bronze down the middle. And this was like styrofoam again, you know. But what I was working on at this particular point, rather than patina,
Both of them. Go on.
rather than patina and the bronze afterwards, because I'm a ceramicist also, I teach that, I mixed a concoction of clay and smeared it on the styrofoam tubes, packed it into sand, cast it, and it came out with this nice textured and patinaed to boot. And then part of it is as the rust melts down.
Is that pie?
That's home
Oh, that
in
little
Chinese.
sign.
Yeah.
Oh.
Home.
Home. Do that again.
And just like this. This is what I was talking about, the tube.
And these are going to be in your Hannon House show,
Yes, they are.
which takes place on October 16th, 2009.
Yes. And so this is like cord here, so this slides right in. And then bolted to the limestone and then just cemented together.
Oh, it'll be so interesting to see all of these in the gallery setting after having seen them here. I know that one.
Yeah, I have a tendency of walking around going, hey, I'm pretty good.
I do that too.
And so this weighs a ton.
Yeah.
So he had seen it at the 5th jade auction and decided to buy it because the price was better than the sculpture. Invited Veronica and I over for dinner, told me to come out to the garage. They wanted to do a trade. And I said, well, you know I don't like cars or motorcycles or anything like that. And the guy said, shut up and come over here. And so he unveiled it. It was still in the crate from China. And it was like, done deal. So I was working as a courier at the time, and I had these bodybuilders who were like bouncers. You know, they were like guards. And I said, you guys, I got to help move a Buddha. And they were going, what do you need us for? I said, just trust me on this one. We got it in the back of my little Ford Ranger, and the wheels in the front went up. So I had to take these 250-pound, two of these 250-pound guys and squish them in with me, so the front wheels went down. And the garden wasn't like the garden, so we backed up the truck, and we held it up and underneath it with the crate. Veronica knocked the crate off, and we put the Buddha there.
The Buddha and his rocks. So you enjoy your life here.
Oh, I'm amazed
I
I'm
mean,
still alive, one, and
why?
I'm very happy.
You
know?
have persevered, man.
Oh, yeah. I've lived through a lot.
I was looking at a statement that my father made when he graduated from Cass Tech, and he said, success is the reward of the persevering.
Yes.
And I mean, this whole place is just so full of information. I mean, Obi.
Oh, this is, I always wanted a boat, but it sank.
Yeah.
This is one of my first boat constructions.
Oh, oh, wait a minute. I didn't even notice this.
This was at Pink Creek in the park.
Yeah.
You know, I won a contract to get the seed money to build it, and so I got a boat and cut it in half, and all the steel rods, and it's like a boat on the rocks.
So this has been exhibited?
Yes, it was at the park at Pay Creek for a week. This took 2 trucks, 4 guys. These are a series of pieces I had in a Toledo show, and these are called Tears of the Sea.
You've shown all over.
I have. My resume or my Vita is starting to look like War and Peace. Yes.
Okay. But I think that that camaraderie and that collaborative nature is something that should be talked about more with young artists.
Oh, yeah.
And what I've been observing are these young artists doing that, getting together and really helping each other. Do that again.
That's my glow-in-the-dark turtle. It's important.
Yeah.
Oh, too, it's funny stuff because it's like I spent a great amount of time down here. This over here on top of here, you could show this. This is the layout of a fleet moving across the Pacific or the Atlantic. These are the carriers in the middle. Notice the tails of them. So the tails are swimming up the street.
Oh
And they're like magnets. I do have a hilarious sense of humor. That's
Man, this is incredible. I am so fortunate to be here.
Oh, my pleasure, Gilda. My pleasure.
I love looking at this. I mean, I can't, you know, you are so right, the documentation.
When we commandeered the Wayne State Foundry, a couple of graduate students, the foundry was closed at Wayne State, and I was working at the foundry at CCS, and they came over and they said, you know this Bielat guy? And I went, yeah, why? And they said, well, we're going to take over the foundry and we need it rebuilt. And somebody told us that he knew everything about foundry. And I said, well, from what I understand, he does too. You know, and they said, well, can we get in touch with him? I said, well, what's in it for him? And he goes,
And?
so he can cast as much as he can pay for. And I said, sounds fine. He goes, well, who is he? I said, it's me. And you're right. We thought you were a lot bigger. I said, a lot of people say that when they meet me. Yeah. So I went over there and they gave me a AAA key. We rebuilt the furnace and we threw
a big soiree called a formal bronze pour, where all the students who were in the sculpture department and myself got dressed up in tuxedos. Somebody donated caviar and champagne to this soiree, linen tablecloths, and a chamber orchestra from Wayne came, and we said, "You're never going to be heard over the furnace." And it was like, they said, "No, we want to be here." And so they'd play, and the furnace was roaring, and we opened the fire doors, and it's like these people who were there had no idea what it took to pour a piece of metal.
And it blew
impressed
their
them.
minds, didn't
Well,
it?
this one woman goes, "Well, I wanted to buy this bear, but it was $3,000. It was an abstract of the bear." I said, "Did you like it?" And she said, "Yes." And I said, "Is it out of bronze?" I said, "Yes." And I said, "By the way, this is only 1/3 of it now. 1/3 of it was making the piece,
Exactly.
screwing it up. The other third of it's pouring it, and the final third is to take it all apart, cut the screws, the gates off of it, polish it up, patina it, and put it on a base." And she goes, "I'm going back to buy the bear." I said, "Good idea, good idea." Oh, dude, this here is a little steel fish that at CCS, there was a competition for making tables, and there was this young artist, Frigette, who was out there, and he made this table that looked somewhat like an aquarium, and he wanted my opinion, and I said, "Are you sure you want my opinion?" And he goes, "Yeah." I said, "I'll give you my opinion." And he said, "Yeah." And I said, "The only good thing on it is the fish." And he goes, "I think I agree with you." And came back from the fountain with a hammer, whacked the fish off, and gave it to me. And I said, "Thank you for that." He goes, "What are you going to do with it?" I said, "Put it in my studio." So if you ask my opinion, beware, because you'll get it.
Really doable, and you don't have to have a 5,000 square foot studio.
No. Like I told you earlier, I worked out of the back of my truck when I didn't have a studio, and it worked just fine. And then too, there's our traps. When I was a kid, and I was out, I saw a muskrat trying to chew its leg off. And so when I was a kid, I used to carry rocks in my pocket, because I lived out in Fraser, which was the country at the time, you know. That was the second house in the suburb when we moved out of Hamtramck,
These are
Detroit.
traps.
And so what I would do after that muskrat, I'd walk around with rocks in my pockets, and I'd go to the trappers, and I would just drop a rock in it to spring all the traps. You know,
Ooh,
so
they didn't like you up there.
well, they didn't know who it was.
Yeah,
you know.
well. And look, fish hooks.
Fishing lures. And people say, "You collect those?" I said, "I guess I do now." I had purchased a couple just because their sculptural quality to them are like unbelievable. And so from then on, people started giving me them, and so like I have a whole bunch of them now. But I didn't really intend.
Did
What? Robert Hansen, the metalworker.
Yeah.
That's one of his signs, and it's just. I said
What?
when they took down Zeitgeist Gallery, they were having a sale, and Bob and I are friends, you know, and so it's like I said, "Can I have this, Bob?" He goes, "What are you gonna do with it?" I said, "Put it in my studio." And he goes, "Sounds like somebody like said this to you." I said, "Many a time." "You did what?" You know, so it's like that. So I have to have that in here.
Okay, let's stop now, and this is part of your garden.
Yeah, and the steel structures with the cable and the stones, it's called Ode to Stones. There's one in front of the house and 4 have sold. You know, and so
You like stones.
yeah, well the thing is I found it very interesting, especially when I got older, that I read that farmers used to tend their branch of a tree if they wanted to hang away, you know, hang down, they would take and put rocks, hang rocks from it to bring the limb down, and the limb would grow that way. And so I was always enthralled about this, like ranchers and farmers did this, because it was like, what the hell's with the rock in the tree? And then he told me, I went, ooh. And because it was it just was odd to me that a rock is in the sky.
Yeah, but
You know?
it's they're using it as a tool.
As a tool, and so it's like, you know, and then this stone is to homage. Somebody once asked me, "Oh, I collect rocks." I said, "I don't collect rocks. I use them." Big difference.
What I really enjoy about looking at your work is the amalgam between the found object and the casting process. I really find that to be intriguing.
Well, see, one of the things about one of my students made me that. Another one made me an anchor. The hand is like it was sitting out here with the snow on it. My nephew goes, "It's the Terminator!" So the young artist thought that was absolutely terrific. But see, with the found object aspect, see with the nails coming on through here,
Yeah.
you can see it's starting to tear. So eventually this is going to be a nice red run mark.
Yeah.
Here and here. As you can see, as this dripped down to cover this.
Oh, yeah.
So as this piece outside cures, everybody has a problem with rusty steel.
I don't.
This steel is going to outlive people's great-great-grandchildren because it's quite thick.
Well, they
You know,
think that the
and
rust is going to eat through, but
no, it sets itself.
as a painter,
It sets
I
itself.
love that color. There's a painter. Oh, there's something I just discovered. There's a painter I know, James Stevens, just had a show at Limburg, and he could paint rust. And I always wonder, how did you get that color, man?
This is called core,
Core.
as in core of the earth. You know, so again, the suspended rock. And my niece and nephew has fun swinging it around. This is the chief, and he's fishing.
That's another kind of like motif you've got here, like the fish that the student gave you.
Uh-huh.
And
Well, fish in both Christian and Buddhist fame is like, you know, symbol of life.
that's right.
Plus, I'm from Michigan. When I was a younger man, I fished a lot. And part of it was spending a great amount of time on the water. Here's one of my favorite sculptures in here.
In here?
Yeah. And people go, well, doesn't that bother you? This is called Three Cuts in a Zen Garden. This is when I was a visiting artist in the Foundry at Macomb.
Yeah, but it's something to discover.
I know. Well, that's what gardens
that's-
are always supposed to be for.
Yeah.
You walk around, you discover all kinds of little stuff. But in the wintertime, it shines. And people say there's no such thing as a winter garden. This garden is absolutely stunning in the winter.
In the winter? Yeah.
Because the shadows from all the sculptures and the snow and the pond goes on all winter long. It's like, I sit out here in the winter and I work out here. When I'm making big stuff, I work out here.
No, it's really wonderful, and it's like you're in tune with nature, and you are.
Nice bronze bells.
Yeah.
But for these to ring, it'd have to be a hurricane. We're by the little bells over there. The temple bells work just fine.
Think about this show, Mr. Holland.
I am very, very pleased with this show.
Good.
I would recommend it to everybody to come here and see the show. It presents an attitude that most people don't consider. It may shatter some old beliefs and begin new ones.
Well, let's go look at the show.
Well, I've seen it. I'm going to go in again.
Oh.
I think it's a show that should be reviewed and by a very, very serious reviewer and presented in a large organ, that is to say newspaper or other publications
Well,
in
we're
the
gonna
city,
work on that.
so more people could find out about it.
Well, we're going to work on that.
Yeah.
I have one comment. I think all young sculptors should look at this and
Yes.
realize what unbridled passion is, and then passion for sculpture and making form and creating things that are alive.
That's great.
Everyone should see it.
Oh, that's great.
Before they get that down to
We're going to follow in Diana Alva. There's the artist himself talking about his work. You may remember that I spent some time with the artist during the summer and interviewed him, and maybe some of these pieces have now been brought to fruition.
Yes, indeed.
Ah.
Yes, indeed. Gilda.
So I got a testimony from the Dean of Sculpture, Jay Holland.
Oh, yeah?
He's outside, and I'd like to hear what you have to say.
I like it. It looks nice in a
I
clean,
think-
well-lit space.
A clean, well-lit
Lit space.
lit space. I think it looks great.
Yeah, for over here, Gilda, when we were talking in the studio before,
Yeah.
these were the styrofoams on the wall.
I remember.
And now they're metal and done.
So
Playable forms.
I saw styrofoam, and now they're metal. You have taken something and made something else out of it.
Yeah. Alchemist. I always thought of myself as an alchemist.
You're an alchemist. Well, I will let you see the rest of your guests, and I will document the rest of this work. Bielat, the sculptor of warriors, who is one himself. And there we have it.
We're trying to get in Hello and welcome to Metro Arts. I am your host, Larry Wallace. Here at Metro Arts, we highlight some of the best in the business, from fine artists, photographers, and performing artists to cinematographers and musical artists, all from the Metro Detroit area. On today's show, we'll explore the photography of Bruce Giffen, meet postmodern sculptor Robert Bielat, and vocalists from Sound Lab will perform in studio. We'd like to welcome sculptor Robert Bielat to Metro Arts Detroit. Hey, Robert, how's it going?
Good, Larry. How are you doing?
Thank you so much for joining
Oh,
us.
thanks. It was a pleasure of inviting me.
So you've been creating work for over 40 decades. Tell us about the overall themes of your work.
Overall themes is basically form. Form and space. I work in suites. Like, for instance, this was part of a suite called Feathers from Icarus's Wing. And I do metal casting and fabrication, more casting than fabrication. And this so happens to be a theme from mythology, and I have other ones, that revolve in turn that are patina. This is raw bronze. This is patinaed bronze, the green, and you can make it into brown. Part of my procedure on how to do it is like this would become that. This is foam that I built. I chopped up all these little pieces and glued them all together and then put these tabs on there. And the tabs are just the tabs from bread bags.
Oh, okay.
And then after casting it, pounding it real hard and heavy into the sand so you can't get your fingers over the sand, pour molten metal in here. The molten metal burns away the styrofoam. The gases go out into the sand and out of the top, and then when it cools down, it becomes this. So what was styrofoam is now bronze. And the orange color from here is because the static steel melts at a higher temperature than the bronze does. We'll melt and fuse this into the bronze, and then when you put the patina on, because it's steel, it gets that orange color to it.
Oh, cool.
So, and these are called tied to the whipping post. So, the old whipping post, they used to just cut the ropes and give you a new one when they started to whip you.
Yeah.
So yeah, you got lucky.
Yeah.
And so this is the same concept as because this was put in the sand like this. And then this is cardboard, or was cardboard. The styrofoam was burnt, formed, and then I had glued the cardboard to the styrofoam, tied it down with this. These are stripes on here. These stripes you can see are very faint. It's from duct tape.
Oh, wow.
About a 1/4 inch of duct tape wrapped around these. And then when this was poured, the cardboard and foam melted away, and so did the duct tape. And it took the form of the cardboard, duct tape, and now it becomes Icarus's wing.
Oh, wow.
And so it's a laborious task, and
Yeah. That's awesome.
But it's a good concept. So yes, and
Yeah.
so I've been doing this, for about 50 years.
That's great.
Started in 1965.
Yes. So all of these pieces look phenomenal. What is your main source of inspiration when it comes to creating work like these?
Well, again, like I say, I work in suites. Part of it just comes to me because I'm thinking of form and shape all the time. I did this whole series called Collateral Damage and Views from a Drone, and they all have screening so that's steel, so it's a bimetal casting. But in it, they all look like little islands with like a target over the top from the screens. And they're big old screens from industrial fans that I cut away, and formed, and it looks like a target line. Because the guys that are in Arizona who are blowing up everything in Afghanistan, I fly into that place from Arizona. So it's views from a drone. And that's what the whole suite. So that suite took me about 2 years, give or take, and so now I'm just dragging it around and showing it at various galleries. And so I both make wall reliefs and also freestanding pieces.
That's awesome.
Yes.
Awesome. So are you working on any new projects?
I'm working on this. When my wife and I went to Italy, we saw this beautiful metal work that was, for instance, it was Michael, the archangel, was taller than you, out of gold and bronze and silver. It was like, it was just a step back big time. But it was beautiful, and from that I got all this like birds of prey. So I've made all these wing pieces that I've been working on. So I'm going to pursue that farther on. So it'd be like birds of prey, you know, wings from birds of prey, but not completely in bimetal, where the wings are just abstracted with the steel, and the part of the shoulder of the bird that holds the feathers is bronze. So, and then they like lay together like this, and then the shadows look spectacular on the wall. So I've been in the process of working on that.
Okay, cool. So you actually have an art show going on right now. Tell us a little bit of information about that.
There's this show going on now, which after this views probably won't, you know, it's called the Sculpture Factory. It's on 333 Midland in Highland Park. And it's in the factory district. And now there's like 200 sculptures all over the place. And it's a big sculpture show, and it runs until October 22nd. So, you know, tell your friends, you know, go on by. If you want to see sculpture, you got outside pieces, big pieces, little pieces, all kinds of pieces. Wood, stone, steel, you know, granite, yeah, just some beautiful, outstanding stuff. And some not so good.
Yeah, definitely.
This is Director's Choice, Obsession, Bodies of Work. And we're so lucky to be here early because the artist who made these lovely pieces is here. And his name is Robert Bielat. Hi there.
Hello, Gilda, how you
Go
doing?
over there in the light, in the dark. Yeah, these are awesome. And you were telling us about this. I want you to.
Okay, in 2002, this suite was done, completed, and then I showed a couple of painter friends of mine. They didn't like it, so I threw it in a box in the corner of my studio. And it has to do with, in 2002, my boss at Schoolcraft College said, you will learn the computer or you will look for another job. So I won the battle but lost the war. So I am doing the computer now, but this is what was left, of my opinion, of trophies from the Luddite War.
I love these.
Yeah, good.
They have the same kind of tension as your work with, like that I have in my studio.
With the metal?
With the, yeah, and the stones and.
I had once asked a friend, because this is such a segue from my casting work,
Yeah.
that does this look like Bielat? And he just, Todd Erickson went, oh yeah, this looks like Bielat. There's no question about it.
This is Bielat. These are. No, at first I saw that you were in here, and I walked in. I said, well, where's Bielat? And I said, wait a minute, this is Bielat.
Why, thank you, Gilda.
And the thing I like about this show being here, and anything that you can say about it, is because when the students see this work, we're always talking about the body of work and judging an artist on their entire body of work.
Time, yeah.
Yes, not just one piece.
Yeah, no.
In a way, that's not.
Conglomeration of
Yeah.
pieces. And that way, well, after 40 years, the more you do this, the more you're getting your own voice, and the more you can say, well, I'm not listening to critics any longer, the more you as the sculptor. That's it, you know.
Not listening to critics anymore. Just doing what you've got to do.
If it makes sense to you as an artist, then do it.